Here's what I'm saying. This might be a stupid analogy, but I'm going to give it a try, okay? Somebody says, and here's why that interested me, the idea of your health on your wrist. So let's say you want to change your workout routine, and you set a date, okay? Next Monday, we're going to start this new routine. And then you wake up Monday, and you've got a horrible cough. You've got the flu. Well, you're going to say, hey, we're still doing this workout routine, but it might need to wait a couple days, right? I gotta put it aside so that I'm in the right spot and I can effectively go after it. That is my analogy for what the Giants are doing with Rafael Devers. In other words, the rebuild is already on. They won't use that word because that's taboo around these parts. This is a major market and a major financially affluent marketing machine with a beautiful ballpark, the San Francisco Giants. It is not allowed that they tell their fans we're rebuilding. So just do it without telling anybody. And the only characteristic that does not fit into a rebuild is that the Giants don't have a quote-unquote low payroll, and they are not free from bad contracts. But that's not for lack of trying. Because of the CBA, because of the injuries to Chapman, Adames, because of these situations, the Giants are basically saying, we're going to get there, but not today. We're going to have to table that till next year. But all of the other characteristics of a rebuild, trading veterans, stockpiling prospects, suddenly changing your focus of scouting to the international realm, stockpiling high draft picks, accepting losses. Take a look at what the Giants are doing. They are calling up people from AAA every day right now. It doesn't mean that people on the current roster are hurt. It means they're accepting losses so that they can take a look at individuals. That's your redefining success. Progress is now measured by individual player growth. And the highlight of the season came over the weekend when both Baseball America and Baseball Prospectus both came out and said the Giants now have a top 5 farm system in all of baseball. Those are the characteristics of a rebuild. And the only reason those big 3 contracts are still on the team is because the Giants currently don't have a choice. But I believe they will. Now, not with Chapman and Adames necessarily, because those two have the right to say no. They've got no trade clauses. But keep losing, and I guarantee you that they will waive the clause potentially at some point. So that's kind of how I see what the Giants are doing. They'll never use the word. They'll never tell their paying fans that this is what they're doing. But all of the characteristics of a rebuild have already gotten underway.
Yes, and the proof is in the pudding. And in this case, the pudding is Robbie Ray expiring, gone. Arise, gone. 4 other guys gone. Elliot Ramos, team control. Well, He decided that he was not going to be somebody who fits into your pitching and defense model if you ever can make it back to that. And so you've got Logan Webb here for 2 more years under contract. Is he going to be around to be a part of what happens after the rebuild, or does he become somebody who is collateral damage because he is actually somebody who would be attractive in the offseason or attractive at next year's trade deadline with a year and a half left on his deal? And so I don't think you're wrong about the idea of the rebuild, but I disagree with you as far as their ability to make something out of the Devers, Adames, and Chapman contracts. I just don't know if this ownership group, well, I'll just say it this way. I don't have faith in this ownership group that they will go into their coffers and dig out the money necessary to make those things go away.
Well, I hear you, and I completely feel where you're coming from on them, but what gets me thinking about it is, like, you're paying that money anyway. Like, you are going into the coffers. You're going into the coffers to pay Rafael Devers. So,
but you at least have a player, like you're paying for something.
Yeah, but it's getting in your way. It's not like, in other words.
What was the thought going in to actually acquire him? And this is where.
That was a different time.
This is where, it was a year ago. And
yeah.
So.
A lot was different.
Right. This is where I have doubt about Buster Posey and his ability to do the job.
Totally fair.
So you have a pitcher who turns out to be better than you thought, and you trade him, and you trade Tibbs, one of your top prospects, and you bring in Devers, a guy who's going to positionally block your future, and maybe he's not absolutely the most team-first guy. And so, okay, fine, you do that, and man, he's a good hitter. You love to have him. And then you fire a veteran manager and you bring in a guy with no experience to manage a team that's got a bunch of vets. It just feels to me like Buster Posey is kind of making it up as he goes along.
Do you remember what the Giants' record was when they traded for Rafael Devers?
It was probably about 500, maybe a touch above.
41-31.
Or 10 above, okay.
So I remind.
And they wound up 82-80, is that right?
They lost all the games after that.
Okay.
I can't even remember them winning a game since. But that's kind of what I mean, is at that time, the Giants were dealing with a very, very different reality. The thought was, we're good. They're 41-31. We're a good team. And we're in go-for-it mode. But my God, we're desperate for a hitter. The whole organization, for what feels like 6 to 8 years, cannot convince a big-time hitter to join the team. They tried on everybody, from Shohei to Bryce to Aaron Judge, et cetera, and they just couldn't do it. So that's their mentality in that moment. June 15th, 2025. The mentality is, we're very good, but we're desperate for a really good hitter. So they leverage that, and they go get Rafi Devers. And from that moment forward, they have been a disastrous baseball team. So now you're dealing with a completely different reality where Rafi Devers no longer fits what you're desperate to do. And think of all that's different. First of all, you've lost the majority of your games. Second of all, Bryce Eldridge has become a big leaguer and looks like he's going to stick. Third of all, you've brought in a new manager who comes straight from college and probably doesn't blend well with 30-year-old, highly priced veterans who don't want to run hard. So all of these things are true now that weren't true back in June 15th of last year. Changes your perspective a lot. So I'm with you. All of your concerns and your doubt are completely fair. But I believe the Giants are going to try like hell to get him out of town.
Of course they'll try like hell, but I don't know if they'll try like hell to the point where you're going to have ownership be willing to pony up $100 million or so to just buy out the contract. It's one thing to pay him for his services, and the services continue. It's another thing to say, hey, Johnsons, I need 100 cold hard mil. That way we can undo the mistake that I made in trading for him in the first place.
I totally get it, but I guess here's what I mean by this. Like, the way you said it is perfect, which is you don't know if the ownership will pony that money up without the services to come along with it. The way I look at it is, look, they're ponying that money up either way. And in fact, this could save some of it. Let's say somebody, just for the sake of the conversation, somebody will pick up 50% of the money. Someone will pay Rafi Devers $15 million a year for the remainder of the contract. Well, that's half of your money back, and you're probably, and actually in his case, you're definitely replacing him with someone who will only make pennies. So this is, you could look at it as, I don't think ownership will pony up money for nothing. The other way to look at it is, this will save money that has already been inked. You're spending that money either way. So this is a way to save money, because the Giants are threatening right now to dot the entire field with arbitration people. Honestly, like, who else are they going to sign for big money? Maybe a pitcher or something like that. But if you look at their minor league system, they're going to start plopping cheap people in at every position around the diamond.
Assuming that those guys are actually good players, which is another piece of this whole bigger conversation where, yes, it's a rebuild, and I believe that they want to rebuild, but it's a lot of the same people who've been player development execs in this organization, and you have not done a good job of developing players.
Also totally fair. Like, again, you're coming to this conversation with a lot of doubt, and I'm like, fair. Like, wow, fair, beyond fair. However, Buster Posey, in terms of him drafting players, in terms of the young players he just acquired in these trade deadline deals. On that level, we haven't really gotten to assess Buster yet. And you're not wrong to say, I don't know if these guys are going to become players, but the baseball people sure like their farm system now. And my point, though, isn't even if they're going to be good. My point is they're going to give them a look. Like over the next couple years, you're going to start seeing these dudes graduate up. I don't know if you saw, for example, Bo Davidson. He won Pacific Coast League Player of the Week for the week that just ended. He hit 4 home runs and hit over 500. He's going to be in the big league outfield next year. That's probably why Elliot Ramos is a Yankee. He's probably going to be the left fielder next year. And he's going to be cheap as hell for a long time. So your doubt is completely fair. I just think if you are excessively focused on getting Rafael Devers out of town, you'll find a way. They'll find a way. And I believe right now that's what they're going to do over the next 11 calendar months.
Right, 11 months until next year's deadline. Yep. And, I mean, it would be great if they could do that and get something back for him and not just have to pay it down and ship him out. But I don't really have a lot of faith in the manager. I think that this year has been mostly a disaster. He's been learning on the job, and I get that. I think that he's an ill fit for the roster that you have, and it's a little different now because Robbie Ray is gone and Arise is gone, and you're left with Logan and Chapman and Adames and Devers as your true veterans. I think that he should have been brought into a team like the team that they actually want to construct now, which is Marcelo Meyer and Casey Schmidt and Bryce Eldridge. Like, go manage a bunch of 24-year-olds as opposed to Rafi Devers. You're going to try to manage Rafi Devers and you're going to try to manage Adames and like, hey, Willie, it's really important to me that you know how many outs there are and stuff. I mean, no, he's been completely defanged from the get-go.
It's a completely fair opinion. I think the question is when did the front office decide this was a rebuild? Because that's where my brain goes. When you ask, why didn't you sign a bunch of relievers? Why didn't you go spend more for starting rotation? Why did you get Scooter McGee to go play center field?
Harrison Bader.
Why did you do all those things? Why did you spend so little? Well, is it possible that the Giants knew 2 things already at the beginning of the year? A, collective bargaining agreement is about to explode, and we're going to come in with a completely different financial structure for baseball teams a year from now, number one. And number 2, we're not winning the NL West this year. We're not going to compete this year. So let's spend very little. No long-term contracts, no new long-term contracts, and nothing terribly expensive. And the bullpen stinks even worse than you could imagine. The 2 new starters you brought in do absolutely nothing, but that fits. That fits. All it does is open up spots for young guys to come in and show what they can do. And the only signing that worked, Luis Arise, no big deal. It's a year.
He's gone.
And if it goes well, we can trade him at the deadline. That's exactly what
Landon Roop turned out to, not be what he was in April and May. And so he's back to the drawing board. And you look at Carson Wisenhunt, and he's been completely uneven as well. He doesn't look like the answer. Yep. So up and down, even like Blade Tidwell, he came out yesterday and gave up, 6 runs and 4 1/3. And so if you want to look at their pitching internally, they don't have a lot going on right now. And you have Logan Webb and you have a bunch of Brewbakers, basically.
You're not wrong, which is why they spent their entire draft on pitching. But that's their answer right now. They're rebuilding.
So if they are rebuilding, what are we looking at, 2028 or 2029 for your Johnny Levels and your Joe Suarez? And
it's going to be a slow build. Like I said, there's the Bo Davidsons of the world. There's a few others who look more ready than others, but you're going to spend the rest of this year and part of next year checking that out. You probably supplement it a little bit with free agency. But, yeah, I don't even know when next season's going to start. So, no use stressing on it. 2028? Sure. That sounds about right.
Wow. Yeah.
Maybe 29. They're never going to say this. They're going to do things that can make them act like they're not doing this. But all I'm looking at is their behavior. Look at their maneuvers. And they didn't trade any of the big guys, but that's because they couldn't.
Right.
They tried.
I'm sure they tried.
And Chapman's injury didn't help. the other teams knew he's not coming back this year.
Right, and the no-trade clause as well.
Sure.
I don't even know if he would want to be on the move. And the other one is Willy Adames, who, the more you watch him play, forget his numbers, the baseball card, whatever, because he'll probably wind up with 26 or 27 home runs again. But the way he plays, it's not winning baseball. He's a defensive liability. He's a little bit of a lost cause on the bases when he's actually running the bases. To me, he's a guy who he doesn't really fit with a winning team.
He's played well, but I mean, they won. They won in Milwaukee when he was there. He's played horribly this year. It's been a terrible collection of facts from him. Chris in Santa Clara joining the conversation. Hey, Chris, what's going on? Thanks for giving us a ring.
Hey, yeah, thanks, guys. Hey, a couple quick point outs. And, I think the first is that when you take a look at who the Giants brought in, for whatever reason, Posey decided that he didn't want guys coming in who had kind of a big brother vibe around them, who were going to get in the clubhouse and really be lifting people up and creating kind of a real, let's all win together kind of atmosphere. And that is a big shift, I think, maybe from what a lot of fans had expected. It's, hey, we brought some guys in, they're really good, but they're kind of lone rangers who are out there, right?
Huh.
I think even just mentioned with Adames and all. I mean, are these guys really seen as clubhouse leaders lifting people up? Come on, let's go get them. Real cozies. I don't get that vibe from these guys.
Yeah, Chris, can I jump in on that? Actually, yes. That was Willy Adames' calling card when they brought him in. That he was a tremendous clubhouse guy. I think they feel that way about Logan for sure. They feel that way about Matt Chapman. The Devers one is totally different. He's not a leader, but at that point, again, they were 10 over 500. They thought they were rolling. And they needed a bopper. And so they bit. I don't know. That's kind of how I see what the original plan was.
Could be. And then I guess maybe the other little piece just to throw in, I've really been trying to reflect on Vitello for the whole season. And, I've never been a caller coming in going, hey, go after Tony. Hey, listen, he's got his contract. Let's see how it goes. But, I'm starting to realize as I dig into him, it's like, who is this guy? And, people don't get to choose the families into which they're born. You're just born into, you get the parents that you get, right? So I'm not slamming him for having who he has. But, his high school coach was his dad. This is a daddy ball guy. And, at the very core of who he is. And, I went to a Jesuit high school down in L.A., Loyola, which is St. Ignatius, Bellarmine, the whole national network. So he went to a Jesuit school out in Missouri. The only place he got to go was Spring Hill College, which is the smallest Jesuit college in the entire country. That's where he went, coming out of his dad's own team in Missouri. So you go, okay, well, that by itself maybe not a bad thing. And probably, a couple strings got pulled to slip him in over there to Spring Hill. Plays 1 year D2, transfers over to University of Missouri, plays 3 years there. But at the end, there's no pro ball. There's nothing. Hey, let's go and see even, low A someplace. It's straight to go be an assistant coach and then has kind of a run of assistant coach work. None of that's evil. But my sense, I'm kind of realizing this guy was never really a superstar at any level where he performed. If he had truly been that good on a Jesuit high school team in Missouri, he wouldn't have gone D2 Spring Hill. He would have found, it could have been, even if it's USF, Santa Clara, some average Jesuit universities, right, as far as baseball goes. And it just kind of makes me wonder, how is he able to relate?
Well, this is always, Chris, thanks. This is always, what do you think about this? I'm not someone who believes, I know a lot of people do, though, you have to have been like a great player and then, boom, you can be, or at least have a chance to be a great coach because you can relate to the players better. I think there's a lot of examples around sports of people who are either mediocre players or not players at all.
Yeah.
And then they've been great coaches.
I do think that you need to have some sort of a baseline of professional sports. And in Tony's case, he didn't have that. And so you come in and he's admittedly learning on the fly. And some of the portrayals are like, he wanted to be treated almost like a teammate to some of the veterans. And so when that is the case, it's hard for you to go in there and exert your will as the boss.
But he also wasn't a great college player, but then he went and coached a great college team and had a ton of success. Kyle Shanahan wasn't a great football player.
Right, but Kyle Shanahan's been in the pro game for 20, 25 years now.
Grew up around it.